Let me ask you a question. Can you think a thought before you think it? Obviously not. And if you accept that thoughts are occurring as a consequence of neuronal activity, and that neurons basically get activated as a consequence of being stimulated or inhibited by other neurons, then you're kind of accepting that the way that we think is a cause and effect relationship. If you expand that, then how much of you was kind of your decision? And when you talk about personality and disease and who a person is, we often talk about the debate of nature versus nurture, right? The genetics versus the environment you are raised in. But both of those things you don't really choose, right? You don't choose your genetics before you're born, and you don't choose the family, the socioeconomic class, the country that you were born into. I'm sure if you were born in 1900s Germany, you'd be a fascist, and if you were born in 1900s America, you'd be a capitalist. You just kind of are subject to your environment in so many regards. And if you, like many other people, spend hours and hours watching the Sapolsky lectures from the Stanford University lecturer on behavioral biology and basically how the incredible complexity of the environment and internally and externally leads to behavior, you come away with the thinking that actually there's no real such thing as free will, because everything you do is a consequence of everything that has led to that moment. Now, I'm not talking about fate, which implies that there's some kind of personalized meaning in the events that occur. I'm talking more about determinism, the idea that everything that's ever happened was always going to happen. Yeah, that's it. So don't get all nihilistic on me thinking that since there's no such thing as free will, that there's no point to anything ever. The point is, it feels like we have free will, okay? It's the best quality illusion you could ever hope for. And for me, that's enough to accept responsibility and autonomy over the things that I do. And I guess where I'm leading with this is, before you get all nihilistic saying that you'll go murder people because it's not your fault, because, you know, it was always going to happen. I'd just like to say that even if there's no such thing as free will, you still need to be removed from society if you endanger people and you don't follow social norms appropriately. So it's not to say that everyone can just do whatever they want. For social cohesion, we need to follow laws. But there's something quite beautiful that happens when you kind of accept this concept that there's probably no such thing as free will. And it's essentially that nothing is really anyone's fault. And when you think that way, when you start to realize just how much people do that isn't their fault, that is, you know, actually a consequence of the way they were brought up, the values that they had developed as a result of their parents, the kind of genetic predisposition they had to anger, and violence and things like that. When you take into account that essentially when you're dealing with someone that you might really not like, that they're that way because of reasons that weren't their fault, you suddenly get this sense of equanimity. I actually don't know what the word is, but you get a sense of peace and acceptance that essentially it's not their fault. And so when I'm dealing with people who are homophobic or racist or sexist, like, my instinct is to get like frustrated and angry and try and blow up or whatever. But when you kind of appreciate that they're that way as a result of their environment or genetics, both of which they didn't control, you kind of, it calms you. That's not to say you shouldn't educate and advocate for positive, progressive stuff, but it is some kind of, it does add a sense of peace to your interactions. And I need this in the field of work that I work in, because I'm in mental health, and that means that often you will deal with people who absolutely hate you because with mental health, a lot of the time you're dealing with people who don't have insight into their illness, and that can make them really angry with you, and it can make you quite frustrated because people aren't working with you, they're working against you, they're trying to sabotage the plans and things like that. So you need to have a really strong sense of empathy, and that's what gets me through tough days, is the appreciation that we're all here as a result of things that are beyond our control. So that's it for this little rant. Just think of all the interactions that have occurred between atoms since the dawn of time 14 billion years ago for you to arrive at this point in front of your screen to see me talking to you through the technology and you looking at that subscribe button and clicking it. Whoa.